Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Fleet Europe webinar supported by GreenRoad. The title of this webinar is AI Powered Fleet Management. A very important topic for smarter fleets, safer operations, and of course, a stronger business. GreenRoad is helping fleets since 2004, so more than 20 years. And today, with us to explain the core mission of GreenRoad, but also how they can empower your fleet management via technology. With us today is their Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Zohar El Hanani. Mr. El Hanani, Zohar, welcome. I hope that you are doing well.
Thank you, Stephen. Great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure to have you in this Fleet Europe webinar. The topic of today is AI powered fleet management. In recent months, it's all about technology and AI. But of course, we know that many fleet customers want to know a little bit more how to practically use AI in their operations with what benefits for their fleets and for their drivers. And I think that GreenRoad is perfectly placed to give us insight in how to do that. So, what are we going to do this afternoon? We first are going to have, I hope, a very interesting discussion. But of course, the participants, the audience, they can ask questions to you. So, to the audience, if you have a question, you can submit your questions via the chat function in this webinar tool. And at the end of the discussion that I will have with GreenRoad's CEO, I will take a couple of questions so that also your questions are answered. So thank you very much. We are ready for an engaging discussion about AI-powered fleet management. Zohar, GreenRoad is helping fleets since 2004. That's stated on your website. But for those perhaps less familiar with GreenRoad, can you a little bit explain and introduce what GreenRoad is about, what you are doing, and what your company's core mission is?
Absolutely. So firstly, again, thank you for having us here. I think it's a great topic to discuss. Specifically, GreenRoad's been in business since 2004, so we're in our third decade, and really pioneered the driver behavior management space, and putting a really focus on the drivers, being the most influencing element on the vehicle, being that they're behind the wheel and operating the vehicle. So our main core focus and mission is saving lives while helping our fleet managers operate their fleets more efficiently. We pioneered our technology years back, and the uniqueness of it at the core is our ability to train and coach the drivers in trip. So they're getting feedback as they drive, and it allows them to self-correct and continuously perfect their driving to not only remain safe and maintain their passengers safe in the case of passenger transport, but also capture operational benefits, reducing fuel consumption, extending battery life, and reducing emissions. So that focus has remained true to this date. We're focused on safety-centric industries such as passenger transport. Customers generally tend to be large enterprise, Stagecoach, First Bus, Arriva is large global operators for buses. In the oil and gas space, which is another safety-centric industry, the likes of Schlumberger, Chevron, these are all customers using us globally. What we also, beyond the specialization around the driver, have accumulated an abundance of data, which is the topic of today's discussion, is a core asset in which AI can then be generated. Obviously, you need good data and understanding of it to leverage it to develop products that use this capability. And that's really at the core of what we're doing on the innovation front, to provide not only insights in trip, but to predict and assess risk before it materializes.
Okay. You explained it already. Your company exists since 2004, more than 2 decades of experience. Do you have the impression that, in general, companies and their fleets pay enough attention to safety?
Yeah, of course, and it varies by geography, based on regulation, based on cultures. We tend to see that transcend global operators that have, again, enterprise-wide fleet deployment, where a governance is needed, whether it's the regulatory push, whether it's their own internal governance. So definitely our customers have that high degree of focus on safety, and we're the tool, the enabler for them to enact their safety policies.
Okay, but I can imagine that there are still also some challenges that you see with your customers. You are, like you explained, working together with some of the world's largest fleets. What are the main challenges that they are facing today?
So, as we know, it's not one size fits all. These global operators, in one hand, have a global safety policy, and the other hand, need to operate locally. So, how do you act global but allow enough flexibility for local regulation, local cultures, and standards? How do you manage data at a global scale, right? And the more vehicles you have, the more systems do you have? How do you capture and interpret what these sensors deliver? So data overload is real. So you need to design, and we have a flexible solution to allow that adaptability to regional and specific fleet considerations, and also open up the system to capture and utilize and interpret massive amounts of data. So ultimately, the fleet safety or the fleet manager would ask, how do we measure our KPIs? How do we look at the data? Our system allows them to use that. And again, with the AI that we've recently added, we allow interaction with the data in a much more sophisticated way. How do we prioritize our efforts? So many things to do. How do we know what really matters based on priorities, based on urgency? So the systems have to be much smarter and adaptive, again, to the specifics of the fleet manager itself.
Like many other technology companies, GreenRoad was known, let's say, for hardware based technology, hardware based telematics. Now you've launched Digital Edge, which is a software first platform. Why that shift?
So I believe that there's no avoidance of moving from proprietary hardware uh, devices that are installed on the vehicle to a digital. When we say digital, it has obviously the data element, but also has the physical element. How do you deliver that data? So when we look at the shift to digital edge, which essentially takes the capabilities that are available on the hardware device, which we've obviously sold for years, and import them to a tablet or a phone-based solution, which is independent of any specific hardware. You can use it on your phone or off-the-shelf device. And that provides an open canvas, essentially, to enrich the customer experience, the interaction, in our case, with the driver. And this has come from market demand. I mean, the customers are really realizing the time is to consolidate data on a digital canvas. And also, our capabilities can be transported into the vehicle in itself. We can embed our capabilities into an OEM, so sit on the vehicle systems itself without even a need for a tablet or phone. So that flexibility obviously eliminates the deployment time, the service that is involved with hardware, as any fleet operator knows. These things do demand maintenance and ongoing service, and that goes away. So the solution really takes the benefits of a hardware unit,
Mhm.
puts them on a tablet with the same compliance and monitoring capability that would occur on a traditional device.
And would you also say that there is the same level of quality in terms of data accuracy, etc., if you compare your hardware-based telematics solutions now with what you have digitally?
So great question, and I believe the answer is yes. This is obviously where we spent a lot of time making sure the algorithms adapt to the devices themselves. It's a new world.
Hmm.
Our systems, one thing I did not mention, run on any type of vehicle. So it's
Okay.
from two-wheelers. We have motorbikes in India and the Middle East using our software-only system, and we have buses. So the algorithms and the profiles need to adapt to the vehicle. Obviously, a braking event on a motorcycle is not a braking event on a bus. So we have that capability of really adapting to different vehicles and doing it very accurately. Without accuracy, our credibility goes away. So for us, that's paramount.
Mhm.
And that digital capability, and as I mentioned, also embedding it into the vehicle, ultimately, strategically down the line, to a small footprint in a software-only form, is part of the roadmap as well.
Um, the fact that you now have become a digital technology specialist, does this also facilitate perhaps your capabilities on a global level?
Absolutely. So some of our fleets operate in over 70 countries, and the practical deployment can only be done in some parts of the world with software. You download the app and you're switched on. So that global and adaptive and customizable capabilities is key, and it's quite scalable, especially for global operators. So the answer is yes.
Okay. Um, we also hear a lot about predictive insights. We hear a lot about predictive maintenance. We already mentioned digital fleet management. Now, more concrete, what does data and predictive insights in the context of digital fleet management mean in practice?
So, right, the data and predictive insights and digital mean different things to different people. To us, the key component obviously is what do you do with the data, but for what we just discussed in going fully digital on the device itself and the ease of deployment go hand in hand with the data analytics. So for us, digital fleet management includes the shift to a software-only play, riding on any digital device off the shelf or in vehicle, along with the data as we see it more and more of an asset. And what really drives our thinking is the speed to insight. How fast do you allow the fleet manager to understand the abundance of data and act upon it? As we talked about, one of the challenges is the amount of data that needs to be ingested. Our core focus on that is the velocity of that data and the decisioning that comes with it. How do we allow the fleet manager to focus on engaging the issues, the drivers, the maintenance issues, rather than going through reports and BI dashboards and making sense of them? That part we'll take care of with AI. The actions and the whether uh, taken by the fleet manager or prescribed by us, we propose doing A, B, and C based on the data and the knowledge that we have around it, is where we want to focus the fleet manager. So really the modern manager, and it comes with an adaptation of the organization to consume AI. It's a transformation that the customer needs to undergo, will require advanced AI, interactive modules with the data, and AI will be pivotal in this transformation. Enriched data, I think, is as important. We provide the GreenRoad insights, but we can easily intake other data. Could be customer data, could be weather data, could be third-party enriched data to deliver better correlations and predictions, because that's what the beauty of it. It knows how to intake and correlate and ultimately make sense of that, coming from other systems or, again, sourced by the GreenRoad solution itself.
Okay. The magic of artificial intelligence, AI. Can you explain how AI is helping fleet managers and the biggest fleets in the world that you work with make faster, smarter, better decisions?
Yeah, so the human is still very much in the loop, right? We're not replacing anyone, but we're allowing and this can be seen in other industries, better decision making, better decision support, which is driven by data. And I think that's the foundational shift. We're all ultimately driven by intuition. In some cases, we look at the subset of the data, putting it all together um, in a data-driven solution, which is interactive, right? How do you interact with the data? And we all consume. I'm taking our day-to-day life chat GPT, where we ask questions, we get answers. Our ability to use that in the context of safety, which we know quite well, train the module to understand safety, to understand fleet language, and using that to detect patterns that the fleet manager may miss in order to prioritize their attention on the right issues, focus on coaching the driver rather than analyzing the data. How do we allow predictive models to kick in and flag and raise the risk flag if we see something abnormal? How do we look at roads? How do we look at vehicles? How do we look at driver behavior? And how do we combine all of that? Just sample questions you can come up with, right? In the bus business, which is generally divided to different bus depots, which depot has had the highest fatigue rate this past week? How many drivers have improved their driving, and by how much in the recent quarter? Which routes have the most accidents or consume most fuel, and what time of day? It can go as deep or broad as you would like. And that's a new world, because to piece that together independently would take hours and days, and you may miss the event because of the time it would take to understand it. So it's really a game changer.
Okay. Now, some people are a little bit afraid of the possible power of AI. Can you, let's say, relate to that concern? Or do you say, well, no, in everything that we are doing, we are considerably caring about the end customer, about also how we integrate AI and the technology into the business operations?
Okay, it's a key point, right? What you mentioned, it's a new world. There's always the fear of, does AI ultimately take over humanity and change how we think? So everything we've done has been in tandem with the customer's needs and pain points, and we test ourselves, right? We work with the customer, we build use cases, and we, from these use cases, test the data to make sure that it's consistent with the raw data and the findings that we have, to make sure that it doesn't go on its own and create a whole different list of insights. So definitely we put a very careful thought around anything we deliver, and our partner to this has been the customer. Our large customers are really partners in rolling this out with great response so far. So it's very exciting.
Okay. Yeah. With GreenRoad, you also have your own AI assistant that can help your customers. It's called Ask Mila, if I pronounce it correctly. Did you choose the name yourself?
So it's Ask Mila. You're pretty close. It's actually named after the daughter of the product manager. Her
Okay.
name is Mila, so that's where it came from. But really, it could be Ask, Stephen. If you put, it's a nice name, but for a very powerful tool, which we've developed in order to uncover things, right? To use that to look at the breadth of the data, to enrich the insights that we deliver, but really condition the fleets, the modern fleets, to interact with data in a whole new way, beyond the dashboard, beyond the individual report. And they're good examples. I can give you one that came up
Mhm.
with one of our customers in the bus business, right? They're running, as any one of us can see in the bus operations, the routing is key. How do you plan? How do you ensure punctuality? How do you deal with road conditions? How do you make sure that safety is adhered to? In a way, the fleet managers or operations managers were flying blind because, with respect to the driver's impact, are they stopping on the side to idle? Are they driving too fast? Are they driving too slow? So we've taken the safety data. We've also brought in the route data, And we've also brought in different shift data, which varies by time of day and driver. And we've optimized the route to give the drivers insights, or the fleet manager insights, as to what is the optimal route. How do you solve for safety, punctuality, and deal with the environment or the road conditions at once? And that's a huge benefit for them because they can plan accordingly. If they know that the afternoon route warrants speeding in order to meet the timelines, they will re-engineer their schedule or revisit their safety and optimize it for the time of day or the type of driver they want. So it's uncovering elements and optimizing for them. It's
Mhm.
not just saying this is the issue, but how do we make this work in a very dynamic way? So that's just one use case. There are many others that we've uncovered.
Okay. And when did you launch Ask Mila?
So formally launched a few months ago,
Okay.
but really have been working with our customers way before that to test it, develop it, making sure that it does what it's supposed to do with great response. I have to say, it's one of the most exciting things I've seen at GreenRoad since joining, which has been close
Mhm.
to 4 years. It's a new world, really, and it's only the beginning, and will continue to evolve over the next few years.
Okay, so it's quite a new feature. So we can invite all the participants in this audience to also go and check out your website and learn
Sure,
more about Ask Mila, and why not try to use it already.
absolutely.
um, Another thing, and you mentioned it already, and we absolutely need to avoid it, is that we are driving blind, but also literally. Of course, if we want to have good drivers and good driver behavior, we need to be able to engage with them. And driver engagement, we know it, is central to behavioral change. Now, how do you make sure within your company and with the solutions that you have that drivers feel empowered and not monitored?
So this is really a paramount question with respect to what we do. We talked about GreenRoad's history in developing driver behavioral change, especially with real-time feedback and coaching. So the goal for us as a company is to coach, not to police. And that's what we provide our customers in terms of best practices. The goal is to engage the drivers, to see this as a working program that continuously improves, that continuously has a dialogue between fleet manager, driver in a way to improve, no different than other elements you would incorporate into your business in order to create that continuous learning. Uh, the optimal way to achieve this is through encouragement, right? And how do you motivate drivers to see this as almost a game? How do you improve? How do you share take pride in that? So we've developed obviously the best practice of how do you roll this out? How do you get the best results with the system? Because it doesn't run on its own. You need to drive it as part of the organizational culture. The program we've introduced years and years ago is Fleet Elite. It puts the human at the core. The humans are the fleet manager and the drivers. And the technology is really what goes in between driver and fleet manager, enabling that constant interaction through awards, through scoring, through trends, through a very granular paradigm, because we capture so many events which feed into our data to understand exactly where the improvements can be made. Is it the way you brake? Is it the way you turn? Is it the way you accelerate? What time of day? It could be as deep as you'd like it to be. Obviously, with AI, it becomes even deeper.
Mhm.
One thing in that sense, which we're adding that's AI powered, is taking our coaching capability to the next level using data, real road condition data and experience to optimize the feedback to the driver. Can be done only through a digital interface, but I'll give a live example. If we're nearing a corner and the posted speed would show 40 kilometers an hour, but we know based on empirical data that you're likely to have an event, a harsh corner or braking, we will advise the driver in real time to change and adapt their speed. So that's only capable through analysis of real-time data and interpreting that into action. So that everything we talked about AI doesn't only apply to the fleet manager. There are also use cases specific to the driver and coaching.
Okay. Um, Zohar, we are living, of course, in a fast changing world. Sometimes it can be seen as a complex world, also a world where probably all alone it will be difficult to grow and to survive. So, my next question is as follows: what role do partnerships and integration play in your business?
So big role, and you mentioned that you can't be everything to everyone, and especially us as a specialty expert around driver behavior and safety, we need to remain very open. We have designed the system from inception to be able to intake data from third parties and other systems, but also export data. So we've integrated with pretty much everything, starting with ERP systems, BI dashboards. Sometimes the customers look at our portal, but also would like to display our live data in their own consoles. So we are able to export that. Vehicle health or vehicle-centric solutions, cameras, which we have our own, but we've also integrated with others. HR platforms. In some cases, the specific driving scores or data is required to be part of the employee file. So we've done that. We talked about OEMs. That's the next frontier. How do you embed yourself in the vehicle itself? We've done a few, but there's more. I think ultimately we know that the vehicles are becoming more sophisticated with many more sensors. So that's another angle of integration. And the key is to be able to intake or export data seamlessly. Without that being a closed system, I think you'll find yourself alone. And I think it's a key point you asked about.
Okay. Another key point is, of course, everything that has to do with security and data privacy. We see, I'm based here in Europe, in Western Europe. We hear more about drones flying over. We hear more about IT systems being hacked. What can you share about data security?
So of course it's non-negotiable, right? We see that we sell into enterprise. It's always a big issue in any negotiation. We adhere to GDPR. Obviously, in Europe, it's a big issue, and we, for understandable reasons, ISO standards at the highest level, encrypt the data across all data layers. The same applies for the Ask Mila AI for the reasons you had mentioned. Obviously, you need to maintain the data, which is quite proprietary, and adhere to customers' own GDPR and privacy policies. So for us, transparency and trust are key, and data security goes hand in hand with that. So definitely top of mind for us, top of mind for our customers.
Okay. We talked already about artificial intelligence and the capabilities of AI, not just at GreenRoad, but also on a larger scale. As AI is evolving fast, where do you see the biggest opportunities for your company, for GreenRoad, in the next few years?
Yeah, so it's definitely data, right? And I think the digital track we talked about in being hardware agnostic, right? So the sitting on a digital device is already underway, and we've mastered that, which is a great platform to work off. But I think moving from a reactive mindset to a much more proactive and prescriptive mindset, right? How do I advise or recommend courses of action for my customers, which will need to become much more agile and flexible themselves, right? Because if the data and the insights are coming their way and they need to act upon them, they need to be much more efficient and being able to consume and utilize the system in the most productive way. So moving from predictive towards autonomous, and proposing courses of action, broadening the use case. We talked about risk by route, but again, we can look at so many use cases. In our case, we've incorporated AI-enabled cameras. And how do you build context into your insights, right? Is the driver braking because he's looking at their phone, or is it because someone ran in front of the vehicle? And is there a consistent pattern of fatigue that we can predict, and we can slot the driver at different times of day based on our familiarity with their own specific driving pattern? These are just samples of use cases that we're onto. The in-trip coaching and real-time, how do you adapt to road conditions? We talked about. I think that will dynamically be adopted and perfect really the driving beyond what we've developed to date. And I think over time, the use of BI, and I'm saying this humbly, right? We coexist with everyone, but just the power of generative AI and predictive analytics will ultimately make BI in a way redundant, because you can pretty much get anything you need through simple interaction in a kind of straight language form without any structured reports or what we've all been accustomed to. So I think these are the major changes, and we're focused very much on these topics as GreenRoad here.
Okay, already, thank you very much. Saying again to the audience that if you have a question for Mr. El-Anani, then you can submit your question via the chat. We are going to start with our final part, the Q&A round, where we take questions from you, from the audience. Mr. El-Anani, a question related to digital edge, a topic that we already talked about at the beginning of our discussion, with multiple regions, but also different vehicle types, different regulations. For sure, for example, in Europe, where we have 27 countries in the European Union, but we have much more regulation than that. How can we ensure the digital edge rollout stays consistent over time and does not create gaps between local teams, global standards, different regions, and so on?
So that touches the part of the challenge for fleet operators, right? They look at different vehicles. We have mixed fleets with different makes and models. We have fleets that are mixed with two-wheelers and four-wheelers, heavy and light vehicles. So the system is quite adaptive in applying its capabilities across all different vehicle profiles and the different regional aspects to allow a customization to the local policies. The one thing that's important is the accuracy is consistent. So you ultimately get normalized data that you can make sense of. So it's not apples to oranges in terms of the output, the portal in which the fleet manager. So if you imagine a global safety leader, a global executive looking at across different regions and BUs, and the system is hierarchical in nature. So it allows, perspectives on different regions, different trends, is consistent. And that's the key. I think if you lose accuracy and consistency, you lose credibility. We've maintained that across all vehicle types, across hardware and software only solutions. So Digital Edge will continue that track in its new form. It's essentially reincarnation of the hardwired unit in a very software only paradigm. So yes.
You already explained a couple of use cases, also mentioning some of the partners and customers that you work with. The names that you mentioned are some of the biggest fleets. Can GreenRoad help any type of fleet, any size of fleet, or do you target specific fleets?
So generally, we focus on enterprise, which means 100 vehicles and higher. The reason being is I think the tool, the capabilities stand out when there's scale, right? That's when the challenge of managing such complex operation kicks in. So definitely, I would say that's where it becomes very interesting. We do have some smaller customers, but if you look at our large customers in the UK, they have 10, 20, 30,000 drivers driving different times of day, different regions, different roads. How do you manage that complexity, and how do you apply the best practice? So I think that's where the tool becomes quite powerful, with obvious endorsement and support from management. Without a top-down approach and buy-in to the technology, you won't get the ultimate effect, because like any company, needs to embed itself in the culture, the organizational culture.
Okay. A couple of questions. Apparently, she is quite popular already about Ask Mila. Um, how does Ask Mila identify behaviors that indicate significant fluctuations in driver behaviors leading up to accidents before they actually happen?
So, this is really the essence of it. We know how to identify underlying patterns. So, if you take accidents as being obviously a singular event and they come in different severities, different forms, what led up to the incident? How can we statistically correlate the precursors to the ultimate outcome, leveraging the entirety of data? Now, the GreenRoad unit sample many, many events. I mean, we look at so many maneuvers within a trip based on the sensors that generate the different findings. We can tie them into incidents. We can tie them into roads. We can tie them into vehicle and make and model. We can tie it to time of day. We can tie it to drivers, and as they say, the fun begins in making sense of all these data points and finding the correlations. And that's what we've done. In tying in actual empirical events such as accidents to what led up to them, we can identify the pattern of an accident 3 days before it happens, which is quite significant. And that's a game changer, because generally you have an incident, you research it, but you don't necessarily know what were the dynamics before with the specific driver or vehicle. We can use AI to actually tell us.
Okay, so you can already a couple of days before. That is how early Ask Mila can spot behavioral patterns indicating a certain risk or a probability of an incident before that it happens. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's our findings, and we're obviously that's continuous improvement, and we're trying to identify other factors as we go. The richer the data, the deeper the correlation. So obviously, if more data can be fed to even further these indicators, but we pretty much know, and we've done this very empirically quite a few times.
Okay. There is an enormous amount of data also coming from different sources about different drivers, different patterns in different situations. How do you get normalized data?
That's part of the capabilities of the platform. It knows, it understands the language that we work with, and we allow it to intake the data. We allow it to understand it and correlate it. So that's been part of it. Obviously, we take it at times data that's not ours. We took in data from some of the customers' own data coming from their own other systems. And that's the beauty of the platform. It's coachable, it's trainable itself. And through that, with the right safeguards and governance, it does ultimately understand the data, and then utilizes that capability to create the prediction or propositions to the fleet manager.
Okay. Talking about digital edge, when it is initially introduced, what is the expected impact on safety and operations in the first 90 days, the first 3 months?
Yeah, so the system is quite straightforward in the way we introduce it. And it can start even with a pilot or a POC that we run. We look at the before and after. We create a baseline of without the coaching, right? So we turn on the device, we capture the safety patterns. So if you would be driving, Stephen, we would build the baseline for you without coaching you.
Mhm.
And at some point, when we have enough data to show what your normal behavior would be, we would turn on the unit. It could happen over in a live deployment, could be part of a POC again. And once that is turned on, the impact is quite rapid. Again, the prerequisites would be engagement, obviously, by the customer to make sure that it's rolled out properly, and beginning of the interaction between driver and fleet manager in a very structured approach. Within 90 days, you see a radical shift in behaviors. It's quite immediate. Um, and improvement. And the way we measure it is in scoring. There's scoring trends based on the number of events and the types of events that are generated. Events being bad behaviors versus the right behaviors. But obviously, with Ask Mila, you can take it a step further in really understanding the underlying data even further. So within 90 days, you'll see a significant change. And that's generally how we introduce the product. There's a set of best practices that's been tested and proven over the decades we've been in business of how to introduce the technology and get the best effect early on.
Okay, let's move now to Europe. One of the things that we see since a couple of years, and it will not immediately fade away, is of course the trend to fleet electrification. You already talked that your solutions can not only improve safety, but also play a role when it comes to more sustainable fleets.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit to the European fleets in the audience how you can help them more in concrete when it comes to fleet electrification?
Yeah, so the profiles we have adapted them to EVs, which obviously drive differently than conventional vehicles. So that's one part we've done. The other is how do we get more out of the battery, right? That's one of the elements is how do you manage your energy? How do you manage your range, right? Avoid range anxiety. How do you plan your charging grid and schedules? So we can do all of the above. And as you asked earlier about the openness of the system, tie into any EV platform, whether it's the scheduling or the management of the fleet, to inject essentially both the driver safety, but also the energy efficiencies that come with proper driving and correlate the way the driver is using the vehicle to the optimal use of the battery in the case of EVs. So that's one element that we're very much there. We had integrated in the past with an electric bus, right? That was embedding ourselves into their console as a software-only component. That's another way of being part of the EV transformation. So there are many ways of doing that, but they're definitely on the energy consumption and optimization. That's a big part of how the vehicle is used by the driver in the context of the usage of the battery and range.
Okay. Uh, Before that, we go to some hardball questions. One more question linked to Europe. Many companies in Europe they want to expand telematics, but they face, of course, we talked about it, very strict data privacy rules, and sometimes also work council concerns, union concerns. Think about countries like Belgium, Germany, also in France. Based on your experience, what are the key success factors to implement telematics in a compliant and accepted way across the European Union?
So very relevant, obviously, to our experience in selling into global operators. We talked about the need to localize and adapt to local regulations. We've gone through many exercises dealing with GDPR, and as you can imagine, that's the main item the procurement and technical teams look at in Europe because of the privacy concern. The system has all the safeguards. Obviously, there are trade-offs how deep and how broad do you want to look at the individual driver or business unit, so we can either dilute or elaborate as needed. It's quite flexible. It's hierarchical. Who can see the data? Who can look into the specific driver's information? In some cases, we've had instances where we've been asked to look only at the business unit without looking at the individual driver. So the system allows for that. It's a question of policy and degree of adherence and compliance the customer wants. But the system is geared for any scenario, and we've built it that way, knowing that privacy is paramount to the fleet manager, particular to the driver, right? There's a high degree of privacy around their activity.
Would you, for example, recommend to start with telematics in, let's say, more easy to implement countries, and then based on those best practices, try to convince the more complex and more difficult ones? Or would you do it perhaps just vice versa and show that you can do it in a more complex country and then roll it out to the other ones?
I think it's situational. Generally, we approach customers that have a need, right? If there's no care about safety, then obviously the GDPR would not be relevant. So I think for the segments that we serve, which are generally global enterprise with this safety governance, or industries in which safety is paramount, like oil and gas, utilities, construction, and field service in some cases, um, the complexity is something for us to solve, but the real issue is solving there's inherent pain when it comes to driver behavior. So I don't know if there's a rule to how to approach it, but we've seen different types. We've had customers start in EU, kind of the strictest privacy levels, and move outside of them, and vice versa. I think it's situational. I think it's ultimately driven by the customer pain and need, and we cater to whatever the requirements are as a result.
Okay. Is there then perhaps a common pitfall that you would advise the audience to avoid in terms
And
of implementing telematics?
I think to you have to build the system, and I'm saying this as I'm sure others are looking at this as a key factor. It's not unique to us. If you operate within the regulatory frameworks, you need to adhere to that in your solution. But we built a system that's ready for these safeguards. So I think anyone that wants to operate in the regions and beyond, because it's not just Europe, it's other parts as well of the world, definitely pay attention to GDPR, the likes of the parallel regulations, definitely.
Okay. Three short hardball questions to
Mm.
end. What can you say about GreenRoad that people probably don't know yet, but they will be uh, positively surprised about?
So I don't know if it's unique. We have a very, very good understanding, and it came from the entire discussion of the driver, and that
Mhm.
puts us aside. For most telematics, if you look, do focus on the vehicle. And it's natural, right? The vehicle has a lot you can learn from. I think our expertise and ability to shape behaviors and do it in scale and do it digitally and globally is unique. And we've been around for a long time perfecting that. That's been our focus from day one. It hasn't changed, it's evolved, but the core mission remains the same: save lives and change behaviors for the better, and do it in a way that's collaborative, not do it in a big brother type of thing, but create it as part of an interaction between fleet and driver. And that's our expertise, because there's so many telematics vendors, very few focus on the driver and have built that expertise. And I would say that's what we do best. And customers that use us, and we have customers that have used us for over close to 2 decades. A few of them, large ones, have embraced us ultimately as part of their culture. It's really embedded deeply in what they do.
Mhm. We talked about AI and the power of AI. Don't you think that we sometimes overestimate the capabilities of AI?
Where it ends up, I'm not a prophet, right? But I know where it's beginning, and there's a lot of room to evolve. And this industry specifically, compared to others, I think is in a way lagging the embracing of the AI. It's quite a traditional industry. I've personally been in other industries that were earlier to adopt. So I think there's a long runway here before we get to a point where we debate where are the boundaries, because we're really early days and exciting early days. for the industry. So a lot to look for in the future.
Okay. Talking about the future, if you had to describe the fleet of the future in one or two sentences, what would you say?
Hmm. Um, I'll go with big words, right? I would say it's a seismic shift in how fleets are managed, right? We talked about reactive to proactive to prescriptive, leveraging data and AI at the core of any decisions that are taken, operational, safety, and beyond. But I really think it's a seismic shift because the focus to date has always been the devices, right? How did we get the right sensors? How do we install the sensors, capture data? Now we're at the point of what do we do with the data, and I think that's really the fleet of the future. Not saying that the sensors will not matter, the devices, but is really what do you make of the data and how do you act upon it in a very efficient, professional manner. So I know it's more than one sentence, but I think this is. I hope it captures, the fleet of the future.
Definitely. Mr. Zohar Elanani, ladies and gentlemen. Zohar, thank you very much. Thank you for the discussion. It was a pleasure having you in our webinar. Thank you very much for explaining your vision and GreenRoad's vision about AI powered fleet management. To the audience, if you have a question for GreenRoad or you want to know more about GreenRoad, then please visit their website. We will put the link to the website in the chat function. So if you would like to know more about the solutions of GreenRoad when it comes to digital and AI powered fleet management, just check out their website. Once again, thank you very much for your attendance. Zohar Elanani, thank you. And thank you
Thank
to
you,
your
Steve.
organization. And I hope that we can stay in contact. See you soon again for a next episode of our webinars.
Thank you, Stephen.